You're on ABC Radio Queensland and on the ABC Listen app. It is 9:10. Now, the state government has this week moved to suspend the Human Rights Act to use police watch houses to detain young people. It was moved through Parliament this week, and since it has sparked some pretty intense debate from a range of perspectives. I spoke with the retired Magistrate Pat O'Shane and also a community advocate, O'Shane and Cuthbert, to find out their thoughts.
To be honest, I think it's disgusting. I think anything that a government does that suspends a Human Rights Act is just disgusting. We heard Michael Maywar for the Greens, he called it a dog act. And it really is. I mean, I have spent time in watch houses in Queensland, and they're not nice places. And I suppose some people will say that they're not meant to be. But, you know, children in watch houses, a lot of them are underground. They don't get any sunlight. There's no access to yards or exercise equipment or, outside. And, their access to education, healthcare is also very limited in a watch house. And these are things that I think, as adults and just as members of the community, we can't allow this to happen.
Former Magistrate Pat O'Shane, what are your thoughts on this?
Have they forgotten the days of Bielka Peterson and Russ Hinds? Is Pat O'Shane now heading to establish a fascist state in Queensland? It sounds like it. I don't think I've heard of such a situation, and that is that the Integrity Commission has been suspended. What does that mean? That sounds to me like fascism, and I say that advisedly. We need to have the ABC rerunning the Moonlight State, that show that was done some years ago. Trot it out again and remind Queenslanders that this is not the Sunshine State.
Shane, what are your fears in this with the Queensland Government's decision to override the Human Rights Act?
Look, my fear is that these children that are already criminalised, they're already in the system, are going to be more disadvantaged and crime will increase. I mean, you lock people in these underground cells with no light, no access to healthcare and education for possibly months at a time. I mean, they haven't really said how long these children that are going to be locked in these places are for. And, you can imagine the psychological effects of that on some of these kids that are already damaged, that have already experienced abuse and trauma, and it's just further traumatising them. I mean, I spent time as a young person in custody. I've also spent time in solitary confinement, and there's plenty of research about the dangers of having someone confined in a space like that. And I just think that, it's disgusting, but it's not helping any of the situations right now. The ministers are saying that it's an emergency power and it's an emergency that we must, bring this sort of, these legislational rules or whatever it is in. And, but at the same time, ministers have acknowledged that, we've been keeping kids in watch houses for years. So, I ask why is it an emergency now? Why does it have to happen now?
One of the things that the Queensland Police Minister, Mark Ryan, has said is that it will ensure the immediate capacity issues can be addressed while young people are held safely. But portions of the public have been saying that they want more done to address some of those youth crime challenges around different parts of the state. What do you have to say to that, and what would you like to see done?
Look, the law is and the politics as well. We need to find balance. I'm not a fan of rushing these things. It sounds like it was rushed. It has caught everybody by surprise, the media, even the LNP, who are in opposition at the moment. It was tabled with 57 pages, a whole bunch of stuff, and it was hidden in there. When you catch people by surprise and there isn't time for community consultation, you're rushing things. And I'd like to see more support. I'd like to see some consultation around it. And I'd like to know that, they've thought about this. It just sounds like it's just something that's been rushed in, overnight.
You are on ABC Radio Queensland. I'm Susan Graham-Ryan, and I'm speaking with former Magistrate Pat O'Shane. What would you like to see done here?
Close down the government.
It's a big call, Pat.
Kick them out in a few months' time. But we don't want them replaced with the LNP, who are even worse. I listen to people saying we need to do X when, in fact, we need to do A, B, C. This is outrageous. I've used the term fascist, and I will continue to use it. And if the Palaszczuk government continues to suspend the civil rights of the citizens of Queensland, then I think that's laying the groundwork for a revolution, and we should be marching in the streets. This is outrageous. Suspending civil liberties is, let me say it again, a move towards fascism.
Do you think that this is a reactionary move to those calls from sectors of the public to see more to be done on this youth crime issue?
Yeah, coming down hard on kids. They're not doing anything at all. It is a call to the lowest common denominators. But I can't believe that this Palaszczuk government is doing what it's doing now. And they're using the race card, and they use little kids to play the race card. And
Pat,
that's vile.
Pat, you and me, we have spoken before about some of the initiatives that you had in your courts when you were a magistrate to help reform young offenders. Can you tell me a little bit more about those initiatives?
I instituted programs whereby I would talk to the parents, send them off to see child psychologists and get a report. Then, depending on what the report said, I would give them another bond where they had to go and do work or undertake other programs. It's not rocket science. In fact, encourages young people to start to look at other ways that they can behave. And in fact, I can tell you that Shane, who's walking towards the car again, is one of the young fellows I dealt with in my court some years ago in New South Wales. And he, as you know, is actually a success story.
And Shane Cuthbert, you were one of the people who went before Magistrate Pat O'Shane with her different approach in the courts and have since linked up with her as an adult, and you're combining your forces here to give different perspectives on this issue. This is different to what some people in the community say they want to see happen to address the youth crime challenges. What would you like to see happen? Would you like to see more instances of that type of approach rolled out?
Oh, of course. I actually attended a forum with Pat last week about the building of a new youth detention centre here in Edmonton, which is a suburb where we live in Cairns. And every single resident there was against it. Nobody wants to have something like that in their neighbourhood or in their area. And, I think that there are things that we can do better, certainly.
That's retired Magistrate Pat O'Shane and also community advocate Shane Cuthbert there. Some serious words from both of them. And I have contacted the Police Minister, Mark Ryan, and also the Youth Justice Minister, Di Farmer, for a response to some of those claims. Both turned down the chance to speak. It is coming up to 9:20 on ABC Radio Queensland and on the ABC Listen app. Well, we're going to continue talking about this. The Queensland Police Union support the amendments this week. Here's what the President, Ian Levers, had to say.
I 100% support this because the bigger issue is this amendment gets around what the do-gooders and lawyers who want to hide behind human rights and say watch houses are not a fit place for a youth criminal. Well, I say this, until the new youth detention centres are constructed, we have to have an option. And the option is not allowing these youth criminals back into the community who've committed very serious crimes such as murder, violent armed robberies and home invasions, and rape, as well as stealing cars and causing mayhem in the community. So I take the human rights of the young criminal, but I'm also, what about the human rights of the victims? We never hear about the victims. The victims need to be protected, and if these people cannot stop committing crimes, they need to be kept in a cell, albeit a watch house or a youth detention centre, so be it. But all youths have an option, and that is, if you don't do a crime, you'll do no time.
So many people are asking, why this move, why now? Because this has been happening for such a long time. Some people are feeling like this has been rushed through. What's your take on that?
No, what I do know has happened of recent times in the last few weeks. The Attorney General and the Youth Justice Minister were aware of matters where do-gooders and some lawyers were looking at the human rights with a view to ensuring that no youth criminals were going to be put in the watch houses. Now, that is a real issue because the youth detention centres are at capacity, but we have to do something, and we have to protect the community and the rights of victims. So this is a temporary option, and they will be in a watch house where they will not be with adults. They will not be in danger. In fact, I'll suggest many of them will be safer in a watch house than where they will be in their own environment, and that is a sad indictment upon our society. But I say this is a short-term solution. We cannot arrest our way out of it, but we need to look at a long-term solution, and that is all levels of government working together, along with communities, non-government organisations, to solve this so we can get generational change. Because I've heard in the past, it's you can't arrest your way out of things. There has to be a long-term plan. I've done some research on that, but it requires everyone to work together and not people just wanting to bang on about a problem, but a genuine solution. And I go back to what Warren Mundine said. He said it's about education and jobs. And sadly, a lot of these youth criminals, 70% in Queensland, are from First Nations backgrounds. They live in poverty. They have little to no education. So there's some of the things we have to address so we can get generational change. And it's actually a sad indictment upon society. But we've got to look after victims and protect victims. There are no other options. I've seen lawyers and courts release them back into the community, and we're getting more victims of violent crime. That is not acceptable, and we have to protect people.
I spoke with retired Magistrate Pat O'Shane on the program this morning, and she's made some claims, including saying that people are using children to play the race card, and she's also described the state government's suspension of that Human Rights Act to detain children in police watch houses as a move toward fascism. What's your take on that?
I totally reject that in every way, shape or form. It's not using the children. We are seeing a youth crime epidemic, not only in Australia, but around the world. There are no consequences for actions. We need to modify that, and that needs to be generational change. And I say to these do-gooders and people like the former magistrate, what were they doing 5 or 10 years ago when this problem was brewing? Because the issue is now, police are responding now, so all these do-gooders should get out of their chairs and go and look after people when they know the problem is about to occur. And that's what I'm suggesting as we move into the future. Everyone needs to work together to stop this, but there has to be a short-term solution. Try telling, and it's only alleged, but what happened to the 3 people in Maryborough by an alleged 13-year-old in a stolen car who killed 3 people. Try tell the families in the community of Maryborough that person should not be kept behind bars. That is absolutely unacceptable. It is a shame that the youth detention centres are full, but we have to do something, and releasing them into the community is not the option. It's not fascism. It's an indictment upon our society that we've actually got to this point.
Queensland Police Union President Ian Lever's there, and Paul from Cairns has sent through a text saying it's about time the victims of youth crime get some justice instead of looking after repeat offenders. Do the crime, do the time. That's from Paul from Cairns.